So it's a pleasure for me to welcome you to a recital discussion to conclude our On Wings of Song course with a concert. Our recital discussion is going to be by Kirt Pavitt and friends. Let me tell you a bit. The performing artists will be James Stevens, tenor, Trent Patterson, Jorge Modolell, Cho Comens, and Kirt Pavitt, piano, at different portions of the concert. I am your host and commentator, Stan Misler, and the person who really made this concert and the course possible. Our sponsor is Wes Harbison, who is the librarian of entertainment, literature, biography at this central branch of the St. Louis Public Library. So again, welcome to our recital discussion that concludes our course on Wing of Art Song. While a precise definition might be hard to agree upon, most would agree that art song is highbrow niche music, finely crafted, intimate songs setting great poetry of love and loss, and written in the Western art music tradition. That is fully notated music by a trained composer for a highly trained performer to present to a highly discerning audience. In the past, the term art song was often restricted to German lieder and French melody of the Romantic and post-Romantic period. Today, operationally, art song is what highly trained singers choose to perform at their recitals and extends to songs of nearly every style and language that will fit together with lieder or melody. Our recital will feature intimate songs of love in German from the Romantic period and in English from the contemporary USA. We'll begin with perhaps the most quintessential German Romantic lieder cycle, Schumann's Dichterliebe, or Poet's Love, using poems from Heinrich Heine's Buch der Lieder, or Book of Songs. These songs of emotionalism and self-absorption, ranging from joy to despair, present a somewhat meandering attempt of one person to reconcile himself to lost love. It's not easy, especially as nature and his fellow humans, who should be, are not very comforting. In fact, they may even be mocking. In the end, the best relief comes for him to hope that he may place all of his sad dreams and songs of love into a coffin to be dumped into the deepest river he can find, the Rhine, that will carry them away. So who were these arch romantics, Schumann and Heine, and how did they mesh? Trite as it may sound, truly both of them were sustained by love. So Heine was a German Jewish poet born in 1797 who experienced a personal dichotomy or many of them, in reactionary Europe of the 1930s. His early lyrical love poetry, infused with some irony, namely the Book of Songs, or Buch der Lieder that we've mentioned, was followed by aggressively anti-romantic poetry in his new poems of 1844 and satires, Germany, A Winter's Tale. His early radical utopian postures and visionary humanism of political freedom, social justice, and the role of art in nurturing it, raising all parts of life to a higher plane, turned to cynicism. Cynicism. He was concerned that where they burn books, they will in the end burn humans. Having aspired to great fame, wide travels, and inspired love, he died in exile, bedridden for years, suffering from tormenting neurological disease, and forgotten by nearly all, yet meticulously cared for by a peasant class wife, devoted to him for reasons she could not herself understand. Good for an ironic poet. Robert Schumann was a gifted, romantic pianist, composer, conductor, music critic, publicist, whose several careers, compartmentalized in time, were each cut short by physical and mental illness. It turns out his monumental achievement was his great love for his wife, Clara Wieck, the premier female pianist of the 19th century, who inspired his songs and much of his piano music before their marriage, and kept the memory of his music alive long after his death. So, Heine pretty much ignored Schumann. How did Schumann deal with Heine and his poetry? Schumann was inspired by the poetry and was infatuated, but felt personally let down by Heine. Based on one conversation, Schumann described Heine as being a bit enigmatic, both amused by the trivialities of daily life and scornful of the trivialness of mankind in general. Schumann carefully chose poems to set to music. He made a kind of chiaroscuro with Heine's sense of irony, sometimes revealing it, sometimes hiding it. And what of a bit about Schumann's contribution to the art of song, which was really a major one? While Schumann and Schubert really invented Kunstlied, or art song, differentiating it from Volkslied, or folk song, and both wrote great integrated cycles of Lieder, Schumann arguably brought Lieder to its highest plateau. His harmonies are fluid. Unresolved harmonies reflect unresolved longing in the text. He offers the option of dry, almost spoken recitative where soaring melody won't work. He presents contrasting moods in the piano versus the voice. And the intensity of the piano part, especially the extended preludes, interludes, codas, make the piano an equal partner in chamber music for the voice. Many composers were profoundly influenced by his approach thereafter. So, before we start with Dichterliebe, and we'll have a few more comments, Poet's Love, I'd like to invite Jim to tell us a little bit about how he approaches a work like this and what it feels like to sing.
Well, thank you so much, Stan, and thank you all so much for coming. I know that it's a 1 o'clock, whatever day it is, in the afternoon, Wednesday, even better, concert, and I thank you all so much for coming. Getting to do Lieder as a singer is a really singular and a very rewarding experience for myself and the pianists that I'm very lucky to work with, for us to do. A lot of what professional singers and professional classical singers do, it's more opera and concert work. And while very exciting and very beautiful, and I'm sure we all have a favorite opera and a favorite concert piece, there's something about getting to do Lieder that you don't quite get when you're doing an opera or a concert work. Mainly, that is, when you show up for an opera, it's day one, sing through. As the singer, you do what the conductor says. There's not a whole lot of discussion. There is sometimes, but there's a lot of moving parts when you're doing a concert work or an opera that have to be factored into how that performance works. Getting to do a piece like this, or with some of these songs, the English language songs that we'll do later in the program, so much more of it is getting to talk about the music and getting to talk with my pianist, and my pianist will talk to me about what's going on in the music. What are we trying to say? What are we trying to express? That does happen in opera, and it does happen in concert work, but it's not quite always the case. And it's always been my experience, too, that when I get to do a lieder concert or a song recital, I always become very good friends with my pianists, because it's quite a bit more intimate. We get to talk about ourselves, we get to talk about how the music affects us and what we bring to it, and especially in the case of this recital, where I get to work with these two fine gentlemen. They have an extremely varied and wide pool to draw on of experiences that I don't know. And I get to learn something about life in particular. Additionally, on more of a nitty-gritty level, a lot of times in opera, there's only a certain amount of operas that are done. So when you're going into an audition for an opera, you can't just sing anything. You kind of have to go in and sing what they're wanting to do. My voice type, it's a lot of Mozart, it's a lot of bel canto or Baroque music, but very rarely do I get to branch into the style of music like what you'll hear with Schumann, or with some of this really expressive, expansive, almost Puccinian melody in some of the English songs. So it's particularly rewarding for me as a singer that I get to branch out of some of the more constricting genres or time periods that I have to stick to with opera that I don't necessarily have to with song. And particularly, when I work with pianists such as these, they're very sensitive. We can still sing it, and I can still perform it in such a way that they're able to accommodate, and we're able to do this still musically. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and sing Dichterliebe. Again, thank you so much for coming. I hope you enjoy it. It is a very special piece of music, and we're very lucky to be here performing it. So thank you again for coming.
I'd like to spend just a moment and tell you something about the form of Dichterliebe. And if these fellows want to interject, now's a good time for it. So there are 16 songs. It's a song cycle. Songs 1 through 6 present love's more blissful moments. Falling in love, the thrill of being in love. But increasingly, these are tinged with doubt and pain. Songs 7 through 8 present the anger at discovering the treachery of love. Songs 9 through 14 vent disappointment with memories of bitterness, sentimentality, self-mocking, the pain of unrequited love. But they do this with an increasing sense of unreality, that you're not quite sure whether he's talking about what actually happened, whether he's recalling what actually happened, or whether these are just dreams that may be vaguely associated with them. This is going to extend to the conclusion. The last two songs conclude the cycle with two types of consolation. The consolation of envisioning an imaginatory utopia, and a mock burial, where he can take all of his songs and all of his memories and lay them to rest, basically by putting them in a coffin and dumping the coffin into the Rhine. You have in your possession the texts of all the Dichterliebe songs, okay, and with English translations at the side. So you might want to. You might have looked at these already. You might want to look at these for a moment. And the question will just be whether the performers will want to take a break between some of these, at parts during this cycle, just maybe to take a sip of water or whatever, and you guys can, in the audience, can look ahead at the songs to be done. So, again, introducing James Stephens and Trent Patterson, and we'll have more to say about these people later.
diesem vermählt. Das Mädchen nimmt aus Ehren den ersten besten Mann, der ihr an den Weg gelaufen. Der Jüngling ist übel dran. Es ist eine alte Geschichte, doch bleibt sie immer neu. Und wenn sie uns passiert, ihm bricht das Herz entzwei. Die alten bösen Lieder, die Träume bös und arg, die lasst uns jetzt begraben und einen großen Sarg. Neidlich ich gar manches, doch sag ich noch nicht was. Der Sarg muss sein und Größe, Weisheit Berge was. Mit Holt eine tote Bahre und Bretter fest und dick. Auch muss sie sein noch länger, als wir zumeist im Blick. Und holt mir auf zu Friesen, die müssen noch stärker sein, als wie die starke Christoph im Dom zu Köln am Rhein. Die sollen den Sarg forttragen und senken ins Meer hinab. In solchem großen Sarge gebührt ein großes Grab. Ist's hier warum der Sarg wohl so groß und schwer mag sein? Ich senkt auch meiner Liebe und meinen Schmerz hinein.
Thank you so much. What a wonderful performance. I'd like to make a few comments that are perhaps superfluous, but nonetheless I'll make them. When we deal with the song cycle, the Beethoven An die ferne Geliebte, which was the first song cycle, and with the two major Schubert song cycles. We're, in that case, written by the poems written by Wilhelm Müller. We're talking about good poetry. When we're listening to Dichterliebe, we're talking about great poetry. And I'd just like to point out a couple of things that are worthwhile. Some of these poems are just unbelievable. So, the center of the cycle, where the cycle peaks and then comes down, is Ich grolle nicht, which basically has been translated as I shan't complain though my heart break in twain. Rather stilted, but okay. So basically, I carry no grudge, even though my heart is breaking. But it's absolutely wonderful where he says, you long-lost love, I don't complain. And then basically he says, I have looked into the darkness of your heart, and I see the serpent that devours it. And basically, I almost pity you, even though you've broken my heart. So that's one. There is another poem that is, again, a wonderful, wonderful poem. And that is the next to the last, where he says that, you know, it's as if out of an old fairy tale, these dreams have come. And this is long, and I will not read this to you, but if you have a copy, look for it. It's another great poem. The song cycle ends with these old wicked songs. And in fact, there's a play that's called These Old Wicked Songs. These old wicked songs, these dreams that are so bad. What am I going to do with them? I basically have to, in some way, bury them and move on. And of course, what he's going to do is find a coffin and dump these in the river. But it's such a heavy coffin that he's going to need 12 giants to carry it. Okay? And the song ends, of course, in an absolutely wonderful postlude for piano. One of Schumann's really great short piano works. So it's a very, very special piece. It's a very, very special piece that every singer aspires to sing. Whether she is a soprano and maybe has to change a few pronouns, or whether he is the deepest of basses. Everyone aspires to sing this, and it is an absolutely wonderful song. So perhaps we will take a few-minute break and then commence. And when we do that, we're going to change the language, and we're going to change the spirits of the song a bit. It will be in English, and these will be basically contemporary songs, though not necessarily contemporary verses. And in fact, one is not even a verse, it's a letter. But again, we're going to be continuing our theme of love, because art song, in a real sense, is all about love. So we'll take a few minute break and then come back. Yes, I think we've had our break, so we shall resume. So I neglected to do two things, or one bipartite thing earlier, and that is to give a little bit, two-sentence biography for each of our performers. And first, for James Stevens, who is a graduate of Webster and has performed in many, many places, including Union Avenue Opera, does a yearly leader recital at Webster, and actually, of all things, has a day job that's non-musical. So, the second little biography is of Trent Patterson, who is the director of choral studies at Webster University, is a professional pianist as well. If you're a director of choral studies, you have to play the piano. And actually made a guest stint as the director of the St. Louis Symphony Chorus. So, not too shabby. So we'll go on then with someone who actually has certainly made a very important U.S. career, and I'm not sure international, but he may tell us. And that's Kirt Pavitt. Just to say that Kirt and Jorge Modolell, whom you will hear playing in a little while, were the two people who sort of gave me the confidence to try putting on this art song course, because they're the musicians. I'm just the kibitzer.
Thank you, Stan. I think he's more than just the accompaniment. That's me. I'm the accompaniment. It's great to be here. Look to see all of you again. I feel like I'm back home. I didn't know who was going to show up, and I get a little nervous if the audience is bigger, but I know all of you, so it's fine. I wanted to just say a few words. It's been great working with Jimmy to do this, and he was absolutely right when he said you form bonds with your artists. And that made me think about, 100 years ago when I was child prodigy, 6 or 7. I'm joking. I was a full adult, but I used to do something that was started in New York by a man named Anderson Clark, and it was called Affiliate Artists. And I was reminded of that today when we were all here and we're talking and we're doing this little recital. Do any of you know, did you remember that name, Affiliate Artists? His idea was that he would have an organization based in New York that would find artists to put into communities throughout America, and that they would go there for 8 weeks, but not all at once. They would go for a week, then they'd go back to New York or their careers. They were all people that were having careers as young artists. And there were pianists, there were actors, there were every kind of imaginable performer. And I got involved with this because when the singer came to St. Louis, they needed someone to play the piano for them. And so I would often get hired by the Opera Theater of St. Louis. And it was really a lot of fun, and I met so many interesting people. And he coined this word, which is what I'm thinking about now, because today's little concert reminded me. It was called an informants that we did. So we would go into a school or a hospital, or some of them I did in Omaha, Nebraska, and I went to at Lincoln to the maximum security prison. And we had to leave all our belongings outside and, rings and everything. We went in, and the gentleman that was singing was a bass named Joe McKee, and he said, I don't know what I'm going to sing for these guys. And it turns out it was near Christmas, so we did Christmas music, but he also sang that wonderful soliloquy from Carousel, which is about my boy Bill, and of course, wait a minute. What if it's a girl and all that? He thought they could identify with that because some of them were maximum security people. Anyway, this is the kind of thing it was. And it was an informative, informal did I say that? Yeah. Informal, informative performance. And he coined that word, informance. And also, it was a way of, the word I'd like to coin is intimatizing. Is that a word? Intimatizing. Anyway, he made it, you talk to the audience, just like we're doing now. And it broke the barrier, this fourth wall here that, we're all here to have a good time. And so I just want to say a few words while we're giving Jimmy a little rest, because he's going to sing again for us. And also, we've become quite wonderful friends during this thing. I heard Jimmy at a gala for the Bach Society about 5 months ago or something, and I singled him out as being someone that kind of had the ability to really project and emote and do something with the audience. And so I called him up when we were going to put this together, and I said, Sam, I think I might have the tenor for us anyway. And he was available, and he agreed to do it, and we started working a little bit on some of these songs. And I ran across a quote last evening that I sent to him because we had just rehearsed last night, and I had such a good time. And the quote was, it's from the Muppets, and it's one of the Muppet characters' philosophy. These were all the philosophies of the Muppets. And it was, there's not a word yet for old friends who've just met. And I thought that was perfect to describe it, because he and I do feel like old friends during this process. We've gotten to know one another better, and it's been a lot of fun. I wanted to give you a little bit of information. There's 3 pieces we're doing for you today. The first one is by a gentleman named Richard Hundley. And Richard is no longer with us. He died about 10 years ago in New York, where he lived. He was born in Kentucky, and he was a wonderful friend of mine. And he was a little man he reminded me of Truman Capote a bit. He had that same sort of esoteric, is that the right word, sense of humor, and he was a little exotic, and he was small, but he said outrageous things all the time, and like Truman Capote. And I met him. I wanted to tell you the story of how I met him, so we give you some rest. I went home one day after playing at a memorial service for the very famous American soprano Arlene Auger. And I knew Arlene, and I worked with her a little, and she was a lovely woman, died much too young. She was only 56 years old, I think, and she was at the height of her career. But anyway, a number of important people in New York came. If I'm not mistaken, it was at Frank Campbell's chapel on Madison Avenue, which is, if you're going to die in New York, that's the place to have your memorial service. And I went home that day, and my phone machine, there was a blinking, and I listened to it, and he said, I don't know if I have the right Kirt Pavitt, but if you were the gentleman that played today at the Arlene Auger Memorial, I just want to tell you, I was taken with the fact that you went to the piano, you sat down, you played the music like you really knew what you were doing, and those octaves, he said, and I did, I connected the octaves, fingering, and he said they were just beautiful, and I just wanted to tell you I thought it was great, and I thought, my God, I knew who he was, I knew his songs, and I thought, I'm going to call this man back and tell him he had the right number. So I did, and that's how we met. And then he started writing me and sending me songs, he was always writing new stuff. He had the gift of melody, as you will see in this piece we're doing, beautiful, simple, elegantly accompanied, and he knew a lot about music. He had played for Zinka Milanov in her studio, and he also was a sort of he was being mentored at some point in his life when he first got to New York by Virgil Thompson, who was a famous American composer who lived at the Chelsea Hotel on 23rd Street in Manhattan. And he had lots of fun things to say. And I just thought he was a wonderful man. And I think you'll enjoy the song. He believed in music and songs that had melody. He didn't want to hear all this, what I call broken crockery music. The poem for this piece is by a gentleman named James Purdy, who was, Richard told me, had the same birthday I did. Turns out he was off by one day. Mine is July 16th, and James Purdy is July 17th. But he went to James Purdy and told them he had met me and that my birthday was the same as his, and he wanted him to give me something. James Purdy was a rather famous novelist and playwright, and his things were very different. But this piece is very direct, and it's a quote from one of his writings. And he wrote me, and he said something about happy birthday, and I hope you enjoy this novel. He sent me a novel, which actually was all about people like Richard Hundley in New York. It was all based on real people. So the first song, Come Ready and See Me, by James Purdy, the text, and Richard Hundley. The second piece we're doing is called The Letter of Sullivan, Ballou. I don't know, do any of you know this letter? One gentleman, there you are. As you know, this was a letter that a gentleman wrote to his wife when he was in the midst of battle in the Civil War. And I won't say a whole lot about it because it's very self-explanatory, but my introduction to the piece was through the famous soprano Arlene Auger, who also played, by the way, at that memorial, sang at that memorial for Arlene Auger. Renee Fleming sang for Arlene Auger. She sang it, and I was so taken with it that I became acquainted with it, and I decided it was a good piece, and it is, and you will see that. I looked up, the man who wrote the piece is Kander, John Kander, and he was the Kander of Kander and Ebb. And so his claim to fame was Chicago, cabaret, lots of music, lots of arrangements in New York. He was a wonderful composer. He's still with us, I think. Or did I read somewhere that I don't think so. I think he's still here. He's about 97 or 8 years old. I found a quote or an interview with him, and he said one of the things he's learned as he's gotten older, and he said about life, but he said about my life too, is that he was putting together a new show called New York, New York. You all know that song, right? Famous by Liza Minnelli in the movie. He wrote that too. That alone probably put him in a penthouse for the rest of his life. But he said, I've learned that working together with young artists is what has been special to me. And I think that couldn't say it more about the way I feel as well. The third piece we're doing is a song of Ned Rorem. And you remember Ned Rorem from our discussion in class, so I don't really need to talk too much about him. He lived a lot of his beginning artistic life as a composer in Paris. He was a Quaker, born in Pennsylvania. He went to Paris when he was about 25, 21, something like that. Lived there for 5 years in a very famous house of a woman, Marie-Laure de Noailles, who was the wife of the Count de Noailles, and she was the Vicomtesse, and had an amazing existence. She introduced him to everyone who was anyone. All the great artists, Cocteau, Picasso. She had paintings all over her famous house. So he had quite an interesting life. It's a song called Early in the Morning, to a poem by Robert Hillier, American poet, who taught many poets that later on became famous. He was a wonderful writer, also taught history, I think, and poetry at Harvard. And I think that this poem is so perfect because when I was about 22 or 3, I went to Paris to live. And this captures that feeling that I had so clearly about being in Paris for the first time as a young man and feeling like you had arrived. There are many ways to interpret this piece. I think that we came across a slightly different one last night. I'm not sure which one we're going to do today, but if you like it, we would even sing it twice and try to change it. But no, we'll just do it once. So, come ready and see me. Maybe we'll read the words to you before we do the song. Not the letter, but just the first song and the last song. Is that good? Mm-hmm. Thank you. Have fun. If you like it, clap.
If you don't like it, clap.
Wait, this is not mine. It's up here. She's got bottles of water. You know, you don't realize it's dry until you start talking, and then you think, what's the poor singer doing? All the breathing in.
Come ready and see me, no matter how late. Come before the years run out. I'm waiting with a candle, no wind will blow out. But you must haste on foot or by sky, for no one can wait forever under the bluest sky. I can't wait forever, for the years are running by.
Ready and see me no matter how late. Come before the years run out. I'm waiting with a candle. My very dear Sarah, the indications are very strong. We shall move in a few days, perhaps tomorrow. Lest I should not be able to write again, I feel impelled to write a few lines that may fall upon your eye when I am no more. I have no misgivings about or lack of confidence in the cause in which I am engaged. And my courage does not halt or falter. I know how strongly American civilization now leans on the triumph of the government, and how great a debt we owe to those who went before us through the blood and suffering of the revolution. And I am willing, perfectly willing, to lay down all my joys in this life to help maintain this government and to pay that debt. Sarah, my love for you is deathless. It seems to bind me with mighty cables that nothing but omnipotence could break. And yet my love of country comes over me like a strong wind and bears me unresistably on with all these chains to the battlefield. The memories of the blissful moments I have spent with you come creeping over me, and I feel most gratified to God and to you that I have enjoyed them so long. And hard it is for me to give them up and turn to ashes the hopes of future years, when, God willing, we might still have lived and loved together and seen our sons grow up to honorable manhood around us. I know, but a few and small claims upon divine providence. But something whispers to me, perhaps it is the wafted prayer of my little Edgar that I shall return to my loved ones unharmed. If I do not, my dear Sarah, never forget how much I love you. And when my last breath escapes me on the battlefield, it will whisper your name. Forgive my faults and my many pains I have caused you. How thoughtless and foolish I have oftentimes been. How gladly would I wash out with my tears every little spot upon your happiness. But oh, Sarah, if the dead had gone back to this earth and flit unseen around those they loved, I shall always be near you in the gladdest days and in the darkest night. And if there be a soft breeze upon your cheek, it shall be my breath as the cool air fans your throbbing temple. It shall be my spirit passing by. Think I am gone and wait for thee, for we shall meet Early in the morning of a lovely summer day, as they lowered the bright awning at the outdoor cafe, I was breakfasting on croissant and cafe au lait, under greenery like scenery, Rue François Premier. They were hosing the hot pavement with a dash of flash and spray, and the smell of summer showers when the dust is drenched away, under greenery like scenery, Rue François Premier. I was 20 and a lover, and in paradise to stay. Very early in the morning
When this is all finished at the end of the program, we can all have a little talk. If you have questions or whatever, that was all part of the performance, informal performance. So feel free to ask questions. How they felt singing, how I felt playing, all those notes that were supposed to materialize that didn't quite, you know.
Well, we will conclude with a return to German art song, but German art song with a twist. So, German art song, or Lieder, is really about love, or Liebe. And the heart of Liebe is Leben, or life, though sometimes not an easy one. But in fact, death, or at least the thought of it, is never far away. So we're going to continue our concert with several works about love that might appear in a recital, but often won't, because it's usually the singer who gets the top billing. But in fact, I would think that in a good recital, it would be nice for the pianist to have to take a solo bow as well, or to bow in with some piano works. So the Liszt transcription of Lieder, I think, fits very, very well into a recital, and we will conclude with that. So the first two works will be performed by Jorge Modolell, who is a recent PhD graduate of Washington University. And he will be playing first Schubert's Ständchen. And Ständchen means serenade. It's about new love, and does the new love have a chance? The second piece is Wagner's Liebestod, which is not actually a lied, an art song, but actually the ending of Tristan and Isolde that links love and death. But in fact, a soprano who is daring enough could do this as a recital, and maybe Liszt even heard such at a recital. And this is a very, very unusual sort of piece, because the two lovers, Tristan and Isolde, have tried to consummate their love, but something always happens to prevent it. So if love cannot be consummated, at least unity in death is achievable, and this is their unity in death. I think Jorge has a few comments to make about Ständchen and its composition and its form. We'll hear a bit about that, and then hear him perform these two pieces, and then conclude, I think, in a very interesting way that brings the concert full circle.
I just have some very brief remarks. I think this is one of Schubert's most beautiful melodies, and I realize that that's quite a statement to make, given that Schubert wrote over 600 Lieder, but it's one of my favorites. In its original form, the song is in strophic form, meaning that every stanza of text is sung to the same melody. So when you transfer that over to the piano, you risk sounding repetitive in the absence of the text. So Liszt finds a very clever way around that by playing with the range of the melody. So in the first statement of the melody, the first stanza, you hear the melody perhaps in like a tenor range, as if a tenor were singing it. And the second time around, you hear it in the left hand, as if it were sung by a bass. And then the final time, he creates a wonderful echo effect where the melody's back in the tenor range, but it's sort of answered by a higher, again, like an echo effect. So I encourage you to listen for that as you hear the song.
Well, this is, this Liebestod is really a resolution in many ways. So Wagner's Tristan begins in haze and a lot of uncertainty. And in fact, musically, it begins with chromaticism and unresolved chords. So the so-called Tristan chord that one never quite knows where it's going to go. But the piece ends with resolution and with peace, even though it's in death. The other thing that's, I think, interesting about this piece is that Wagner is often a clunky poet. He writes his own poetry for his operas, and it's often kind of clunky. This Liebestod is not at all clunky. It is very beautiful poetry. Liszt is often a show-off. Here, he's not showing off the pianism. It's a very tough piece to play, but it's not at all a show-off. He captures Wagner's essence in a very wonderful way. We're going to be concluding with a rather interesting work, and that is with Schumann's setting of Ruckert's Widmung, or dedication. It was written in 1840, just a little bit after the first piece we heard, Dichterliebe. It was at the time of Schumann's wedding. So if the Dichterliebe was in some way an invitation or a promissory note to Clara for the wedding, this was actually the dedication at the wedding. And, of course, dedicated to Clara. Clara was Schumann's bride, his guardian angel, his muse, whom he almost didn't marry, feared being separated from, and in the madness of his last years was separated from her. But true to the elements of tragedy and irony that often lurk in Lieder, when Schumann was finally reunited with Clara, and he was, convulsions prevented him from dying in her arms. Very sad. I want to just read this poem to you in either in German or in English, but basically he says, "You are my soul, you are my heart, you are my rapture, you are my pain. You are my world in which I live. You are my heaven to which I aspire. You are my grave in which my grief forever I consign. You are repose, you are peace. You are bestowed to me from heaven. Your love gives me my worth. Your eyes transfigure me in mine. You raise me lovingly above yourself, my guardian angel, my better self." An absolutely wonderful poem, and in a sense, a paean to love. This will be played to you by Cho Comens, who actually has an interesting history, and it's a sort of return, maybe a return to the stage for her. She was a graduate of Juilliard many years ago, taught piano for 40 years, and has only sort of returned to the stage in the last several months. So I think it will be a treat for all of us and for Pat as well. Well, I couldn't think of anything better to end the program with about Lieder and Liebe and Leben and love than Schumann's, the Schumann-Ruckert Widmung. So this concludes the formal part of our concert. I hope that with Wes willing, that we might make this a yearly sort of thing, as we do other music courses. And I hope that the people who have participated in this, whom I really thank the performance, will be available to participate in things in the coming years. So, thank you very much.